And Louis's greatest triumph may be the next room, the one that everybody wrote home about. The Hall of Mirrors. No one had ever seen anything like this hall when it was opened. Mirrors were still a great luxury at the time, and the number and size of these monsters was astounding. This Hall of Mirrors is nearly 250 feet long. There are 17 arched mirrors matched by 17 windows reflecting the breathtaking view of the gardens. Lining the hall are 24 gilded candelabras, 8 busts of Roman emperors, and 8 classical-style statues. 7 of them are actually ancient originals. The ceiling decoration chronicles Louis's military accomplishments, topped off by Louis himself in the central panel with cupids playing cards at his divine feet. The king's shown doing what he did best, triumphing. Originally, 2 sprawling carpets mirrored the action depicted on the ceiling. Now stand in the center of the hall and take in the ambience all around. Imagine this place lit by the flames of thousands of candles. Then fill it with ambassadors, nobles, and visitors dressed in silks and powdered wigs. At the far end of the room sits the king on the canopied throne moved in temporarily from the Apollo room. Servants glide by with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres, and an orchestra fuels the festivities. The mirrors reflect an age when beautiful people loved to look at themselves. It was no longer a sin to be proud of good looks and fine clothes, or to enjoy the good things in life. Laughing, dancing, eating, drinking, flirting, and watching the sun set into the distant canal. The importance of this room survived the age of divine monarchs. In 1871, after the Prussians defeated the French, Otto von Bismarck declared the establishment of the German Empire right here. And in 1919, Germany and the Allies signed the Treaty of Versailles, ending World War I, and some say starting World War II, here in the Hall of Mirrors. The King's Bedroom and Council Rooms. You first enter a large room that served as a council chamber for the king's advisors. Now continue on into Louis XIV's actual bedroom. There's an impressive canopied bed, another period piece replica. The room is elaborately decorated, and the decor changed with the season. At the foot of the bed is a balustrade that separated the courtiers from the king. You see, this bedroom was both private and public. The king slept here, but he also worked here. The rooms on either side of his bedroom were for top council meetings. The Peace Room. Look at the symbolic images on the walls in this room. It's clear that by the end of the Sun King's long life, he was tired of fighting. In this sequel to the War Room, peace is granted to Germany, Holland, and Spain, as cupids play with the discarded cannon, armor, and swords. Louis XIV advised his great-grandson to be a peaceful king. The oval painting above the fireplace shows his successor. 19-year-old Louis XV bestows an olive branch on Europe. Beside him is his Polish wife, Marie, cradling their baby twin daughters. Louis XV would prove to be a more hands-off ruler, delegating authority to his advisors while amusing himself with a bevy of mistresses. The Peace Room marks the beginning of the Queen's half of the palace. The Queen's wing is a mirror image of the King's wing. While the King's wing was mostly ceremonial and used as a series of reception rooms, the Queen's wing is more intimate. For instance, on Sundays, the Queen held chamber music concerts in this room for family and friends. The Queen's Bedroom. This room looks like it did in the days of the last Queen, Marie Antoinette, who substantially redecorated the entire Queen's wing. That's her bust over the fireplace, and the double eagle of her native Austria in the corners. The Queen's canopied bed is a reconstruction. The bed, chair, and wall coverings were switched with the seasons. This was the cheery summer pattern. It was here that the Queen rendezvoused with her husband. 2 queens died in this room. This is the room where 19 princes were born. The chandelier is where 2 of them were conceived.
Rick?
Okay, just kidding. Royal babies were delivered in public with witnesses to prove their blue-bloodedness. Neither Louis XIV nor his successor were the most faithful of husbands. There was no attempt to hide the fact that the Sun King warmed more than one bed, for he was above the rules of mere mortals. But Louis was faithful to the show of marriage and had genuine affection for his wife. Their private apartments were connected, and Louis made a point of sleeping with the Queen as often as possible, regardless of whose tiara he tickled earlier in the evening. The Salon of the Nobles. The Queen's circle of friends met here, seated on stools under paintings by Boucher. Folks like the political radical Voltaire and the playwright Moliere participated in the Versailles court. Ironically, these discussions planted the seeds of liberal thought that would soon grow into the Revolution. The Queen's Antechamber. The royal family dined here. It was a public event, with servants and nobles fluttering around, admiring their table manners, and laughing at the king's jokes like courtly sidekicks. Here's the menu for a typical dinner. To start, 4 different soups. Then, 2 entire birds stuffed with truffles. Mutton and ham slices came next, and for dessert, fruit and pastries. Remember, Louis XIV reigned for 70 years, making France Europe's #1 superpower. But his successor, Louis XV, let others run the country while he partied at Versailles. His successor, Louis XVI, took over and waited for the revolutionary onslaught. The Queen's Guardroom. On October 6, 1789, a mob of revolutionaries stormed the palace. They were fed up with the ruling class leading a life of luxury out here in the countryside while they were starving in the grimy streets of Paris. The king and queen locked themselves in the palace, finally retreating to this room. Some of the revolutionaries gained access to the upper floor. They burst in where Marie Antoinette was hiding, overcame her bodyguards, and dragged the queen and her husband off. Some claim that as they carried her away, she sang, "Louis, Louis, oh, oh. We gotta go now." Louis, Louis.
Yeah, right, Rick.
The enraged peasants then proceeded to ransack the palace as revenge for the years of poverty and oppression they'd suffered. Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI were made virtual prisoners back in Paris. 2 years later, they were carried to the Place de la Concorde, where they knelt under the guillotine and were made, as they said back then, a foot shorter at the top. The Coronation Room. No sooner did they throw out their king than the French got an emperor, Napoleon Bonaparte, who's honored in this room. The revolution established democracy, but it was shaky in a country that wasn't used to it. In the midst of all that confusion, an upstart general, Napoleon, took control and soon ruled like a dictator. This room captures the glory of the Napoleon years, when France conquered most of Europe. In the huge canvas on the left-hand wall, we see Napoleon crowning himself emperor of a new, revived Roman Empire,